All right, Trump's put down of the Los Angeles insurrection will be heard around the world. That's the subject of the riff. So Donald Trump is using a tough law and order approach to quell this Los Angeles insurrection. I'm using the definition of insurrection advisedly from the Merriam Dictionary, which states, quote, an act or instance of revolting against civil authority or an established government, end quote. Good enough for me. We're talking about foreign flags flying among the protesters, and we're talking about people using arson, looting, smashing police cars, throwing rocks at ICE agents, spitting on the American flag, setting it on fire, spray painting Death to America graffiti. All these riots and protests and whatnot else must be laid squarely on the doorstep of California Democrats Governor Newsom and Mayor Karen Bass, who from day one have accommodated violent, criminal, illegal immigrants in their supposed cocoon of a sanctuary city inside a sanctuary state, which, by the way, had until recently restrained the well-respected L.A. police chief, Jim McDonnell, who had to play it down the middle because of the California Values Act that prevented him from taking these criminals out himself. But then he reassessed and realized he needed help. But here's a key point. President Trump acted quickly, talking about bringing in the National Guard and even the Marines if necessary to stop the insurrection. Now, even so, at this point, there's only a couple of hundred guards people. But Trump's law and order message is loud and clear. And awful as this insurrection may be, I got to say, the stock market went up anyway. Most investors and people in business are more worried about China's trade talks than Gavin Newsom's love affair with criminals. And as Miranda Devine writes in the New York Post, quote, Trump has learned the lesson of 2020 and no longer has to deal with turncoats in his own administration, end quote. This is so important because, remember, the riots in Minneapolis and Seattle and elsewhere during the summer of 2020, Mr. Trump did not take any federal action. And those insurrections destroyed those cities. In fact, in Seattle, the left-wing crazy people actually set up what they called Soviets, using the old Russian communist structure. But today, Mr. Trump has border czar Tom Homan and DHS Secretary Kristi Noem and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and many others who have no intention of letting the crazies take over Los Angeles. Remember, L.A. is supposed to host the FIFA World Cup next year and the 2028 Olympics after that. And who are Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass protecting here? How about convicted sex abusers, drug dealers, gang members? So far, ICE has arrested about 120 people. Mexico, Philippines, Ecuador, Vietnam, Peru. At the moment, the biggest percentage seems to come from Mexico, hence the flying of Mexican flags. But this is not Mexico. This is America. And even if Newsom and Bass don't get it, California is still part of America. And Mr. Trump intends to keep it that way. He was elected to close the border and deport the criminals. Not that it really matters, but polls show over 50% approval for this criminal deportation program. He often talked during the campaign how President Eisenhower deported 1 million illegals, mainly from Mexico back in the 1950s, under the direction of tough Army generals. In other words, promises made, promises kept. This is not simply some kind of insurrection just in the city of Los Angeles. What Mr. Trump is doing is sending a signal around the world of his toughness and his willingness to take whatever measures are necessary to maintain law and order and national sovereignty for the protection and safety of the American people. Let the communists in China watch this. Let Vladimir Putin in Russia observe Trump's toughness. Let the crazy mullahs in Iran watch Trump's determination. You know, auto-pen President Joe Biden allowed in 10 or 15 million illegals, or who knows how many, with a couple of million gotaways. Who even knows who they are, where they are, from where, and what they've done, and which gangs? Nobody knows. This is one of the greatest moral stains and national security blunders that any president in history has ever committed. And the fact that leading Democrats or Bass or Newsom or others around the country are defending Biden's blunder as everybody watches these L.A. insurrections on TV, this will constitute the most incredible act of political malfeasance in American history.